Welcome to our team, a Therapist Spotlight by Positive Space Consulting. Positive Space Consulting is by and for the queer community. We offer mental health counseling and 2S LGBTQIA+ support here in Ontario, Canada. We are a diverse team of therapists with lived experience, here to support our queer family and meet you where you are at. This is a place to be yourself. My name's Emma. I'm the office manager, everything person here at Positive Space, and today I'm going to be the host of the show. So yeah, welcome. So before we begin, I'm going to start with our land acknowledgement. So Positive Space Consulting is a mental health care practice devoted to supporting the development of a society that thrives through including, valuing, and celebrating the inherent uniqueness in us all. It is also our mission to foster a deeper connection to self and to the world around us. Positive Space Consulting is a team of practitioners who identify as settlers and who live on Turtle Island. Positive Space Consulting recognizes that its practice and its contributions of its family of practitioners take place on traditional Indigenous territories across Ontario. We recognize the 46 treaties and other agreements that cover this territory now called Ontario. Today, the province of Ontario is the home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Each nation is unique in their worldviews, language, and histories, and we gather here in the spirit of openness with the commitment to continue to recognize and reflect upon the important work ahead. We are committed to advocating for all of the requests by the Indigenous people of this land to be granted immediately by our government. We ask you to join us in honoring this history and in moving forward in partnership and collaboration as we learn and unlearn together. Everyone at Positive Space Consulting is grateful and honors the fact that we contribute and work and live in this territory. We would like to acknowledge the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who all have been the custodians of this land as their ancestors were and who continue to respect and contribute to the sustainability of Ontario and all its communities across this province. Positive Space Consulting is honored and committed to collaborating with Indigenous clients, practitioners, communities throughout the province of Ontario and Canada. Here at Positive Space Consulting, we are devoted to working only with therapists who are committed to the continual understanding through education, exploration, and engagement with Indigenous history, reconciliation, and the impacts of colonialism. We as a practice are committed to supporting the mental health of Indigenous practitioners and Indigenous 2S LGBTQIA+ folks accessing our services. So today we have an incredibly special guest. We have Adrian. Their pronouns are they, them. They're a registered social worker here with Positive Space Consulting. Hi, Adrian. Welcome.
Hi. Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. How you doing?
Yeah, good. It's finally warming up where I live, so that's exciting.
Oh, that's so lovely.
I've been joking. I've been living in the wrong London. I feel like I'm living somewhere not in London, Ontario, because it's been raining and cold for like 7 days. So.
Oh, right. And at the time of this filming, the coronation is on Saturday. Are you seeing are people very into that?
No one cares, I think.
Cool. So it's not
one person.
So London.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and there's a lot of good reasons it's not that London either. So anyway, all the same.
Well, that's amazing. So Adrian, let's start off by getting to know you.
Yeah.
So you're a therapist here at Positive Space Consulting. Why don't you take a moment and share with us your journey as a queer neurodivergent person? Who is Adrian? What would you like to know? What would you like us to know about you?
Yeah, it's funny. I ask folks this question during our phone consultations all the time, and I joke that I give the same answer when I'm asked it that they do, which is like, where do I start? It's like your whole personality melts into a puddle and you don't know what to say. But yeah, so my name is Adrian. I'm a queer and neurodiverse therapist living out of London, Ontario. It's been very dynamic and growing. So in terms of my journey, I was diagnosed with ADHD at the beginning of COVID. So most of my adults and like most of my life in general, living with like undiagnosed, and sort of been doing a lot of my own navigating, but what that's like, and how to make it's like I explained it to somebody. It's like you get wearing glasses for the first time, where it's like, oh, cool. Now a lot of things start to contextualize and make sense. In terms of queerness, I'm pretty openly. I'm out within my community. I feel like queer, I know for some folks can be a bit of like a contentious label, but for me, it really encapsulates that there's not like one specific label within the community that kind of fits my vibe or sort of how I relate to both like gender and sexuality. And yeah, I'm non-binary, and I think I've been thinking about that more and like how gender is more fun to be played with and curious about versus like very like statically one or the other, and that's sort of where I've landed there. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything like in particular you think you want to know or anything else.
Well, I think just to like touch on there, it's you recently got a new haircut.
I did. Yes.
And I personally know, to me, like every time I get a haircut is a little bit of a traumatic experience. So I know how that is, but I know when you find a haircut or you find something that suits you, it's like a big step. So I know this was kind of a little bit of a big step for you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it? Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, like so before I got my haircut, I've always presented, I think like probably pretty traditionally masculine, like really long beard, like probably like up to here without exaggeration, like it grows really long, and just like longer hair, but overall still pretty masculine. I think I still do now, but yeah, I was just looking at like what sort of like non-binary or like sort of like ambivalent styles sort of look like while also keeping the beard. And I was joking today with somebody that the beard for me is less of a gender thing, but a stim thing. I really like having something on my face to pull at than anything else. But I'm very lucky that our community in London has a lot of like hair studios and like body studios that are like community allied and have community members working in them. So where I went to, shout out to Brass Anchors in London, they have like all female or non-binary staff, and so they're like really. They dig it and they're cool and they kind of get the energy. And so, yeah, it's nice. I've been really liking it and I still enjoy it. I'm going to color it. They gave me a name of somebody who does color like right across the street from them.
What color? So, like turquoise?
Like red, I think.
I like the red. No way.
So Emma's lying about something, but they didn't send a picture. They sent a picture about the color they sent me was red when they came to the design. Not lying. They're just not saying it. But anyway, I like that red a lot. So
yeah, I think that's gonna look so awesome. Oh
yeah.
My gosh, I love that. I think that's so amazing, so amazing, and the fact that it's like so empowering also is really beautiful. I think that's the reason we kind of exist as a place and why we work together too, is that we get to make those kind of differences in our own lives and other people's lives. And I think kind of on that. So how would you say, like, what kind of sustains your inspiration and how does that influence your work at Positive Space Consulting? So what inspires you? And then how does that kind of correlate to the work you do here with us at Positive Space?
Yeah, like I think it's interesting if I think about like my whole career as like a social worker and where I've like weaved and experienced lack of inspiration and feeling really inspired at the same time. It's mostly been due to the folks that I get to work with, both like the people that I see as a therapist, but also like the coworkers and the team that I get to work with too. And I think that like, yeah, exactly. I think that second part can't be like understated either. Like I've always worked in organizations or places where for some reason, like my view of the world and their view of the world just really didn't align. That's like really hard to do. I call it sort of like, well, I don't call it, Vicki Reynolds called it this, but like it's like an ethical wound, like it's like a moral wound, which is where burnout starts to happen. But I don't find that here. I feel like all of us are on like the same page. It's a space that doesn't do kind of like the liberal tokenism of supporting different communities. Like I feel like this is a much more like radically oriented space with both my politics. And I think that's sort of what inspires me is, not only as like a person with like all sorts of weaving intersectional experiences of both privilege and oppression and my own worldview and being like, okay, well that I want to resist that. And I like walking with other people and seeing how they resist those pieces too. But just the team I work with here is also super supportive and we get to work with some awesome people as therapists. Like I'm always I learned so much from the folks that I work with.
Same.
Yeah, honestly, like, especially clients, like I think they teach me every session I leave with somebody. I'm like, okay, I have to think about that. There's so much learning all the time. Right. So anyway, like I guess all that inspiration piece influences me because I don't think of like I don't separate sort of like my political worldview or the way I like navigate my own world versus like my therapeutic work. Like it's all sort of intermingled, and I'm very like I talk pretty openly with folks I see about that. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a lot of good things. Although I'm not a therapist myself, I totally understand and see that with you in how that goes and how I don't know how you even contribute to the team and how that even I know from my own experience with different jobs that it's a different sort of experience. And I think that's the thing that we're trying to go for, especially because we serve queer people and we're sometimes a bunch of weirdos.
Yeah,
So
that's fine. It's funny because like I've had folks, like it's my if you go on the website and look at my profile, even my Psychology Today profile, like my politics are pretty like clearly there. The
yeah.
language maybe isn't fully there for like algorithmic readability, but it is very clear. Like, and the algorithm's stupid, and we know it's stupid, so this is what it is. But like
Yeah.
anti-capitalist, anti-oppressive, anti-fascist, and so that type of stuff inspires me all the time, and I bring that type of lens, and I use the word resistance very maybe we can talk about that later, but I use resistance as a very like key word in a lot of my work. So
Well,
yeah,
maybe you want to touch maybe that goes into the next question
it does.
there. So maybe we'll touch on that. So how, Adrian, would you describe your approach to therapy? If a client books with you, what can they expect from a therapy session with you?
Yeah, so a few things I think, and I'm not going to list off all the like what's the word like the techniques or the trainings
Right.
because I think one it doesn't matter a super lot, and research actually been the second thing is research actually shows that like the relationship is what makes therapy work. Like for anybody, like if you
Right.
don't connect with your therapist on like on a relational level, they could be the best CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy clinician in the world, but it's not going to matter if they feel like you're talking to a brick wall when you
Right.
because of that, I approach therapy, I think, in a pretty like relational way. I focus on like building like safety, relationship, and rapport, and I do that I think in some really intentional ways. Like I open the door to folks asking me questions, not only about like my identity, but about my journey or like my social location as like a queer neurodiverse person. I also like make sure to leave space for like how that lived experience gets interweaved within my work and not like denying that like I bring in my own worldview within the work. And I think that's sort of where that second piece is like that I was mentioning earlier about resistance, where often I think people feel, and for like really like legitimate reasons, that a lot of what they experience are out of their control. And sometimes there are pieces like I think of like big systemic pieces that can really feel like too big to tackle as one person. Um, so then I like to focus on like, well, how are we going to resist those things, and what does that resistance look like, and like that day-to-day connection of like your values and what's important to you, and how do you make sure, regardless of what's happening around you, you're always living a value-driven life that makes sense for you. Is sort of how I approach, and they can kind of expect me to talk about those things. They can expect me to clients to bring up ideas of like oppression and societal barriers and structural injustices, colonialization. They can expect me to talk about resistance and connecting to values. And I think the last thing I'll say is I fundamentally disagree with the way often people like are treated regarding not just our mental health care system overall, but just in general, that they are like problemed people. Like they are the problem. I just don't think so. I think problems are like entities almost in themselves that really impact and enter people's lives. I know that may sound weird. Like, are they saying that like problems are like actual like things? Well, yeah. In the therapeutic work I do, we conceptualize a problem as an actual thing that impacts people. Um, and I think that by doing that, we kind of remove this a lot of the stigma and the shame that people will walk in to a therapeutic space with, because you get a lot of messaging about how
Right.
not great you are. All especially again, neurodiverse queer people are navigating that all the time. But kind of making space to to validate and say like, you're not the problem. The problems are impacting you, and the problems are the problems, and let's focus on how to kind of navigate those instead. So it's not like a long-winded answer, but that's
No, I think
that's maybe it.
I think that's kind of really awesome. And I think like if anybody's interested, Adrian does have I don't know when this video is going to go out, but Adrian does have a blog out right
I do.
now on laziness. And
Yeah.
how, I can't remember what the blog's name is now. I should have pulled it up, but it's on laziness and neurodivergent folks, kind of telling you you're not the problem. There's nothing wrong with. Do you want to elaborate on it a little bit more? So
I just tried it. If you Google laziness and neurodivergent folks, the positive space article is like the second hit on Google. So that's really cool. So the article, yeah, the blog is called Laziness, Shame, Stigma, and the Oppression of Neurodivergent People.
Right.
And basically the blog is, it's basically just like a bit of a love letter to my own growth of hearing a quote from Gabor Mate, who's like a big like ADHD and addiction writer and mental health. Basically something along the lines of, the idea of calling someone lazy is we do that when people are not engaging in the behavior we want them to engage in. Then we call them lazy.
Right.
And I felt that so, I mean, like thinking it now, I can feel goosebumps because when I first read it, like as a newly diagnosed ADHD person, it like rocked my existence basically. And so I basically in the blog just talk about how like there's a lot of shame and guilt and oppression that exists within neurodiverse people because of the othering they experience in big and small ways through systems, relationships, people, right? So, at the end, it's just basically acknowledging that like, neurodiversity, yeah, sure, it has its challenges, but those challenges are largely based because we live in a culture that doesn't support neurodiverse people, and they kind of celebrate like the cool, quirky, creative parts about what being ADHD, autistic, dyslexic, all the things that make us weird, but good, awesome weird, and not normal, because normal is a gross word anyway, right? So anyway, read the blog, it's cool, but yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Okay, so Adrian, I guess we'll kind of get to our last question here. Do you have anything else you want to share? Any messages of hope or some activity you'd like to share? We know that the world is kind of in a really weird place right now, and we know a lot of people in our community, especially, is being affected by it. Is there anything you want to maybe add to that or share in general?
It's funny because I keep thinking of like the most cliche thing, and I can't tell if that's just my brain being what it is, but I think what's been helpful for me lately in my own, and this is something I say to folks in therapy, is that like, every therapist, you hope, has been like on the opposite side of the table of therapy. Like they've done their own work, or they're constantly doing their own work, because at the end of the day, we're all just human beings, whether we're therapists or not therapists. But especially for our, folks in the trans community, folks in our queer community, folks in neurodiverse, like you're not alone. Like, I know it feels often, right? Like you are, and you experience a lot of things in like, silent queer pain or pain in general. But there are spaces of resistance. There are spaces of accepting and love. And at the end of the day, like that sometimes, and it's okay to have that space be just within yourself, that you yourself are like enough, and you can you can be your own best partner. There's something I learned from a client this week who's chatting about, being solo polyamorous in terms of where they view themselves as a partner within their poly relationship, with their own needs need to be taken care of. And I'm like, well, shit, isn't that just cool? So, but you're not alone, even if it feels like it. And there are places to get support, whether it's, anywhere, but there can be places. So yeah.
That's really beautiful, and it's so true. Sometimes we think like we're alone, but yeah, if you have your chosen family, or even your cat.
Yes.
Then,
I got a dog, and she's like, she slept on my belly and cuddled me all night last night. We fell asleep together. She was like twitching and stuff, but I took a nap, and I was like, I don't need no human being. Like, this is all the validation that I'm a person I need. So.
I guess the next therapist spotlight should be our animals.
Abby and your cat. Yeah, which I can't remember your cat's name.
Adore. Oh,
Adore, yeah, Pavi and
yeah.
Adore will be the next therapist spotlight. They have a big, they're important. So
You know what? They're so important. And so with that, I guess that wraps up our team, A Therapist Spotlight by Positive Space Consulting. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, especially Adrian. Thank you for opening up, for being vulnerable, for being with us here today.
yeah.
I really appreciate it, and I'm sure I will send you a chat later since I'm the office person. I'm always messaging you. If you'd like to learn more about Adrian, or if you are an Ontario resident and you found yourself resonating with Adrian and would like to receive support from them, please visit positivespaceconsulting.ca. When you're there, if you head to our contact page, you can send us a message and book a free 20-minute consult with Adrian to see if they would be a good fit for you. As the office manager, I get all those emails, and I love to hear from everybody. Please, you're also welcome to call us. All our information will be down below. I also just want to take a moment, this opportunity to thank everyone watching, listening, and reading this show. It's all of us in the queer community and all of you who stand with us is the reason myself and Adrian and Positive Space Consulting is the reason we do this work. It's because we know that there are people like us out there who also need support. And we want this place to be the place that was the place we didn't have when we were kids. So we're here, we're queer, we're not going away. And on that note, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.